Alright then, let's talk about Legion, Chapter 5.
Wait, that's not... Sorry, well, that shit I just said, don't put that in your intro.
No, this is now, so whatever you're saying now.
I'm not going to interfere anymore. Take 2.
Are you done, Dan? So, episode 5 was really good.
I have something I'd like to say right off the bat.
Okay.
On record. You can start recording now. It's the fucking Shadow King.
You're cool with that? We're...
I'm not cool with that, but it's still stubbornness. I don't want you to be right, but you are. I had like an epiphany moment when it was showing all the personalities and it went to the dog and it said the dog's name was King. It clicked for me.
Shit, I didn't even notice that myself, and like that's a full, like, that's a confirmation.
It's Shadow King.
Yeah. Well, good. Feels real good to be right. Feels real good to, I can't wait until they actually reveal that in the show, and I know,
I've never felt worse than I do right now.
So I sort of want to double down on what we said last week so this is maybe the best TV show I've ever seen.
It's so good.
Just every episode gets weirder. I keep sort of that thing you mentioned at first of like, oh, is it going to follow this formula, or is this now the formula? It's like, no, every time.
Every episode feels different.
I kept sort of expecting that they were going to fall into some kind of a pattern, and I recognize now that it is one of those things of like, no, the season is just a story. There's not a normal. There's not a baseline to it. It's just a journey to different points.
Well, yeah, I was wondering if it was going to get procedural, where it's like, this week we're gonna teach about this power or something.
And then we'll learn who this personality is, and like, and they didn't do any of that.
And that could have been cool too, but I'm really appreciative of what we have gotten so far.
I'm super intrigued at the premise of a show where the protagonist is also the antagonist. And like there's a bunch of like, oh, you could say that about, but even in something like Breaking Bad, where the character's an anti-hero or whatever, like there's still forces that he's working against. Beyond the Shadow King, I think we're also going to be left with like, oh, okay, in this episode, like, David kills a fuck ton of people.
Oh, and
whether
so
or not
cool.
he's in charge of that, like, that character can never be sympathetic to us ever again, or like he's a fucking mass murderer.
Throughout the whole episode, he was markedly different, and you could tell that not just in his mannerisms and the way he was talking to people, but also the musical cues for him were very like they're creepy almost.
And at the same time, like, I don't think they're not going to do a thing where it's like, oh yeah, that wasn't real, and we're going to go back to the more innocent David. No. Like, that innocence has been lost, and I mean, I think he'll come out on the other side of this like he's so overconfident, and that's going to be taken away, but it's never going to be what it was.
Sure, yeah. I mean, right from the get-go, this episode sort of subverted expectations. I thought the episode was going to be about them assaulting District 3, I think what is it? And nope, that wrapped up in a commercial break, essentially.
I kept expecting that, like, there's the white-haired man, who I thought was going to be the primary antagonist of the whole series, who...
Oh, yeah. Nope. Absolutely not. And, again, as we sort of keep coming back to, like, I think it's David or Shadow King.
Yeah. But I think it's a bit of both. Like, I think Shadow King is the villain for this season, and then the arc of the show is that David is his own worst enemy. And like, I imagine we're going to get into a thing where even if they take the Shadow King out of him, the damage has been done.
Sure, yeah.
Now he's a fucked up person and a murderer, and all those things live inside of him and are sort of created outside of what's going on.
Well, that's what I was going to say as well, is I feel like if this were any other show, I would think at the end of the day, they shoot Shadow King with a giant shotgun and blast him to hell, and David's fine, and somehow they get married and live forever. But that's not what type of show this is.
No, I think it is. Well, I mean, this gets back to what what's his name was saying. Like, what kind of story is this? Is this Fuzzy Bunny has a fun adventure, or is this the waves come up and swallow you and drown you? And I mean, I think David is going to be both. Like, it's him having an adventure, but at the same time, like, this person is going to stay fucked up and flawed.
Sure, and I mean, there are pieces of both already. Like, you can see how quickly their little, like, imaginary room, it started very, like, nice, and although I was still at this stage felt weird about this David, it starts out very nice and quickly becomes, oh no, this is a bad place to be.
Sorry, I'm just looking over my notes here and stuff. Do you know anything about Quentin Quire, Kid Omega?
Yeah, I like him a lot, actually.
Do you know, like in the Morrison stuff, the transformative moment for him is that he discovers he's adopted, and that's when he shaves his head and like becomes basically an evil villain, and all of that stuff. And like again, there's things they're doing. Some of the X-Men comics I think they're referencing are the Grant Morrison stuff, and I wonder how much they're, again, taking templates of other characters. Something that is super obvious that I didn't see before that I saw hardcore in this episode is they're doing a multiple man story with Carrie. Some of the stuff about like how they express like where the injuries start and stop with one and the other, like they've done that stuff with multiple man before.
I'm very glad that they're okay. I was worried. I think, but again, it feeds back into it would be too predictable for like how much trust this show has earned for them to build this character up and then have them just die.
It would have been super unceremonious considering like how much weight those characters seem to be carrying. And like, I like them more every time I see them. Like the more they explore that stuff.
They're great. It would have been very like one more mission and then I'm retiring or something like that. It's just very trite, but they thankfully did not go that route.
I sort of wonder if they're going to do eventually kind of a reveal though of like, can one exist without the other, or like what happens? Again, like I don't expect anybody. The nice thing they have in this is nobody has to survive. David is the only person I think is going to survive. And at the same time, well, in like any actor they want to keep around is just a figment of his imagination. Like they're really open to how they can fuck around with reality that way. Yeah.
I mean, the show lies to us all the time.
Another thing they did. Okay, so there's a point. Do you remember when a guy is shooting at David and Sid grabs him and basically says, "White room," and he takes them to the White room and the bullets can't reach them? There's a sequence in an issue of The Invisibles where a bomb is about to go off, and one of the psychics is around it, and one of their teammates comes rushing into the room and basically says, "Psychic link with me," and grabs her right as the bomb goes off. In his head, he opens a doorway to the other world that they go to. Because they're psychically linked, she goes with him, and that's how they're able to survive the bomb. And it's just one of those, like, in watching that sequence play out on TV and having read that scene a billion times in the comic book, it's like, they just did the King Mob Ragged Robin scene from The Invisibles. Like, that's, even the physical motions they do are the same thing.
Sounds like a restaurant chain.
So I do, again, like, I feel like, I don't know how much I'm projecting and doing like an ink blot test here, but I see this show as a massive love letter to Grant Morrison comics. I keep seeing it. Like, that was a fucking Invisibles moment. There's a whole bunch of Doom Patrol stuff in it again, and I'm seeing his new X-Men run all over the place. I really wanted to say something about how, again, like, I'm so happy that the Shadow King thing is panning out, and at the same time, I can't
believe it.
Do you know what Cassandra Nova is?
No.
Cassandra Nova was Charles Xavier's twin that he killed in the womb.
All right.
And she wasn't a real. This is gonna get. This
is Grant Morrison, right?
Yeah. And he had a concept that was a Shi'ar concept, which was like, I know, and it was a legend they had that every entity faces its opposite before birth. It's one of those weird fucking Zen things that he likes to put in there. Legend says each of us faces our own personal Mamadrai in the womb shortly before birth. It's our first experience of the alien, the other, the different. And they're also a parasitic species born bodiless on the astral plane. And I showed you that picture before of what that thing looks like.
Yeah, it's like this is great audio content.
I mean, I can put pictures up when we put this thing up.
It's like a spooky blue, almost looks like a sort of insectoid thing with like a bunch of arms and a big old mouth.
I almost feel like they're merging the Shadow King with this concept. And then there's a weird reflection in also that this is a Charles Xavier story. and to use a Charles Xavier story in your David Haller story, even if he's not going to be Xavier's son, there's a satisfying pattern to that.
Do you think they'll leave it at that? You're adopted, we don't know who, so it can be inferred that it's Xavier?
I'm really curious about that, because I just don't see how to resolve it. Like, it's a little unsatisfying to never get to say, like it's one of those, I don't know, it's vaguely like the gun in the first act problem of,
gun.
Once you say a character is adopted, you have to resolve that in some way.
Yeah, that's fair.
And at the same time, I don't see how you include Xavier in this show without fucking it up. Here's another thing.
Maybe name drop.
Well, here's a weird theory I'm going to throw out on top of that.
All right.
What if the Shadow King is his dad?
That'd be weird.
Just because, like, they often show the Shadow King, or whatever that is, like, he wears a suit and tie, and there's an impression of a balding man.
Yeah.
And, like, what if David's father was a super powerful mutant who died and then infected his own son?
That would explain why the baby would be put up for adoption.
And that, again, that sort of completes itself in a nice way. I definitely don't think the Shadow, or I don't think what's inhabiting David is the same thing as the Cassandra Nova thing. Because they kind of say in it that they believe it's another mutant. And that's one of those, in a TV show, like, once they say that, I don't think they're going to fuck with that. I think that was their way of telling the audience, here's what's going on.
So you're taking this at face value?
I am, yeah.
Okay. And that's a bold choice.
Well, as much as, like, what the fuck? What was one of my favorite lines? Be careful, there's a chance we've left the real world and we're in David's world.
Yeah, that was
This
cool.
show is so good.
Oh my god, the silent part of it. We were talking about this earlier while trying not to talk about this at all. That's so unique. You don't see that. You don't see people willing to take a risk on having, like, let's just have no sound for the next, what was it, 5-10 minutes close to?
The only thing I can think of is Buffy. That's the only thing I know of where they did that, where they dropped the sound out for, and I mean, they did that for a good while in that one episode of Buffy. But yeah, and similarly, they milk so much comedy out of it. Like, it's a really tense, scary situation, but I think some of that stuff...
his little head in,
and
other Carrie's got
him
the big
just
spiked
yelling
bat.
at him. Oh, I love the spiked bat. And I love them just fucking with those rules all the time of, like, so she can carry a spiked bat. Like,
Sure,
fine.
okay,
That's
yeah.
what's going on.
She's got different clothes, I guess, so...
There was something so satisfying. I sort of knew it while it was happening, and about getting Radiohead in an X-Men thing.
When did they play Radiohead?
That was the big song when they were traveling in the car to go see, and then they find all those people David killed.
Right. Yep.
And then even afterwards, like, I went online, I looked at all the lyrics, and I was like, oh man, it matches up. They're talking about asylums and, yeah, just mistakes, and I don't know, it's...
This sort of, like, off-putting hair on your neck standing up moment when he was in the White Room playing the little...
The banjo and...
Oh, yeah, banjo, you're right. And she sees in the room, and was that when Shadow King pops out, or was it after that?
There's a bit of both.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, because I think that's when she closes the bathroom door and then he shows up, like, right after.
You're right. That was a great moment. I feel like they really know how to set up what you're supposed to be feeling in these moments. I think it's a combination of, like, set dressing, music notes, and obviously performances. It all coalesces so smoothly. It's like a delicious caramel cube.
Speaking of performances, I want to just walk back. Like, I wasn't super impressed with Aubrey Plaza before. I didn't really get... I sort of thought she was, like, being a little caricature-y or like kind of one note, and I didn't get it. And now, with the reveals they've kind of made, now it's like, I suddenly have so much more... And I get what she was doing earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get it before. I just thought the character was kind of dumb.
It completes a circuit.
Yeah. Now it's, this is actually a super fucking good performance. Mm-hmm. Like, she's... Again, now you can kind of go back and it's like, oh, she's also the villain throughout all of this.
Yeah,
like she's not just an antagonist of him.
Mm-hmm.
She is the voice of the other.
And it even sort of pays off the way that she, like, holds her head. Like, she's got her eyes all widened and it looks menacing now.
I don't know exactly what it all means, But the way
Grandpa
she
Pattison.
started manifesting at the end with, like, the bow tie and
her
like,
hair.
there was
Kudos
something
to that hair
about it,
department.
like,
That looked really good.
that character has ego. Like, that
Yeah.
character has a, like,
It's got a
that's
will.
not a thing you necessarily have to do with that, but it's interesting to see of, like, yeah, like, that character does think highly of themselves, or, like, there's something going on there. Something going on there.
the entire video is summed up in one sentence. Barely a sentence.
What else?
I don't know.
It was so good.
I know. I feel like we're already at 15. We could go for another 45, surely. Should we wrap up?
Yeah, let's, I don't
Cool.
know. It was, so Legion's a real good show.
It's very good. I would recommend everyone to watch it. Although if you're hearing this, hopefully you've watched it, or I don't imagine you will.
Sorry about that.
Sorry about
People
that.
who are listening to this who haven't watched it yet.
Yeah.
But, you know.
All right, do your little outro.
Hey, that was Hank and Andrew listening to... No, wait, that wasn't what we were doing. Hey,
We're not listening to anything.
I'm Hank.
And I'm Andrew. I sound like a dwarf.
Well, a lot of people don't realize that from this recording that you have to record as a dwarf, which is why you're always down. I'm done with this. We're done. Thank you so much for listening.